Now that we're making a fortress of these islands, the Prime Minister inspects the battlements. Mr. Churchill paid a visit to a naval port on the east coast and inspected naval officers and ratings. The Premier was in his customary mood of grim good humour, typical of the wave of determination that has swept through Britain with each new shock of disappointment. Since the collapse of France, this empire stands alone, but it won't be the first time. The spirit that built Britain into the greatest empire in the world is still with us to keep it so. At another port in Britain, our cameras called in to record the refitting of a light cruiser, part of the routine that never gets into the headlines. The Navy never rests. Now more than ever before, it is vital that the eternal watchfulness should not relax. Add to the guarding of home waters the huge increase in the coastline that must now be blockaded, and you will realize how enormous is the task that our sailors have to perform. But they are proving every day that they are more than equal to it. Supplies of all kinds go aboard ready for the months at sea. Ammunition follows, turned out in ever-increasing bulk by the tireless labors of the munition workers. Yes, the Navy's ready. Underneath the occasional episodes of grandeur, Narvik, Dunkirk, River Plate, raids on the enemy coast, there is a solid foundation of unspectacular work superbly done. Blockade, troops escort, submarine hunting, convoy work for food and armaments, and the unremitting guard of our shores. Every night that brings another day safely to its end, we may well thank God for the Royal Navy. London says, "Hello, Australia." More overseas visitors in London. New Zealand sailors inspected by the High Commissioner. And the Queen visited the Victoria League Club, where 400 men of the forces from the Empire stay while in the British capital. Representatives of nearly every branch of the services from the Dominions and Colonies were here to meet Her Majesty. Now let's have a look at the Anzacs abroad. In the Middle East, they're hardening up for the big clash that must come sooner or later. While they're waiting for real action, they put into their training everything they've got. When the big day comes, the Dominions will be there. And troops from the mother country are with them, a pretty tough proposition. Fighting alongside the British and Anzacs, Indian troops await a meeting with the enemy. They'll be very pleased to see him. The decks are cleared for action, and it looks as though when the action starts, Britain is going to be well represented. Clashes between British and Italian forces have already stirred the sands of the Western Desert. This is one of the raids by Italian planes which have been reported, and it shows that the words of the communiques are correct. Little material damage was done. A column of smoke in the distance shows where incendiary bombs have found a target, but the raiders never came below 16,000 feet, and accurate bombing was impossible. But war correspondents had a narrow escape. Our cameraman was trapped in a sandy dugout for an hour. The attack was driven off, and a British seaplane returns from the job. On the other side of the picture, here are some of the native levies with Italian officers who had been captured by British raids on the enemy ground forces. In this theatre of war, the balance is increasing daily in favor of Britain. Here is an early view of the activities of the Royal Air Force on the desert borders of Libya. Some time ago an advanced air striking force was established there. Now they've advanced and struck. Italy's empire in the sand is exceptionally well situated for having bombs dropped on it. These are some of the presents from Britain about to be sent to military objectives in Libya, Eritrea and Abyssinia. These are types of the Royal Air Force operating in the Western Desert. Britain is proud that her destiny should be in the strong, sure hands of such magnificent young men. Day after day, the attacking bombers take off. Each new dawn is the witness of another air offensive getting underway. Every one is a blow in the name of freedom. Nearly all the well-known diamond dealers in Europe gathered at Christie's for the London sale of a superb diamond necklace. 42 perfect stones, many of them larger than a sixpence. The necklace was a present to Britain from a lady who wished to remain anonymous, part of her contribution to the nation's war effort. The auction in this historic house, which has seen so many treasures change hands, proceeded as calmly as if the hammer were coming down on a job lot. The bidding opened at £10,000 and went up to £24,400. Money for the war chest. Home from Italy and returning to Britain by a west coast port, Sir Percy Lorraine, British ambassador to Rome. Sir Percy was accompanied by the British minister and other representatives of Britain in the land that has been wantonly dragged into war to suit the purposes of Mussolini and Hitler. The Queen has made another tour of hospitals somewhere in Britain. As usual, Her Majesty had a cheering word for everyone, and she admired a specimen of millinery handed to her by one of the patients. Some of the bedwear had a topical touch. A pair of bed socks showed the Prime Minister in a most businesslike attitude. More men's jobs are being taken over by women to allow for the quicker call up to the fighting forces. We may expect to see more of these pleasant scenes as the weeks go by, the fair sex splashing a dose of the picturesque onto the ordinary things of life. But the worst of bill posting is that it is such a sticky job. They're very busy just now at the American Embassy in London. The job that is keeping them busy is that of evacuation of British children to the United States on the eve of the Battle of Britain. This coincided with the introduction to Congress of a bill under which 100,000 British children would be admitted to the United States in addition to the 65,000 quota. The embassy has opened an evacuation bureau at one of the great hotels in Park Lane. The first batch of youngsters went through the formalities in its famous ballroom. There was a medical examination. Only healthy children would be allowed to go. It's a very sad business, parting from children just when they're reaching the interesting age. But these are days when selfish considerations must be put aside. British parents say goodbye to their children to spare them the horrors of modern total war. Many Americans have opened their arms to the little fugitives to allow them to face the future with nerves unshattered. Mr. Joseph Kennedy, the United States Ambassador in London, has been personally supervising this work. With each day that passes, we hear of some new generous offer from prominent American citizens.
Hello, what is your name, please?
Martin Simon Aldrin.
Martin Simon Aldrin?
Yes.
And are you British or American?
Well, half and half, really American.
American. How old are you?
I'm 9, and we're 10 September.
10 September, I see. Well, I put down 9.
This is to signify that I, Marmaduke Chumley, am of sober habits and... you smudged it. One of the worst problems that farmers have to face is that of poor grassland. Mr. R.S. Hudson, the Minister of Agriculture, was present at the start of a campaign for ploughing and reseeding.
Millions of acres of grassland run down, which aren't producing as much as they ought to in the present crisis. I've come to inaugurate an experiment to see if we can't get more food out of these acres.
Thus we continue the drive to make Britain largely self-supporting in food. Now come to Australia. If this war has done nothing else that is good, it has awakened a real appreciation of the great dominions overseas, a granary for an empire. From those rich and fruitful farms in the Commonwealth, the treasures of the good earth supply our nation at war. Thousands of tons of golden wheat gathered from a bumper harvest, passed by the experts as perfect. Piling up is a steadily growing mountain of sacks. The grain is the reward of unceasing toil and natural-born farming skill. Broad backs shoulder 200-pound loads with the rhythm of a musical symphony, and the notes are banknotes. Here's a factory somewhere in Essex where the day's work is just starting. It's like 1,000 others, where the man on the gate greets the managing director.
Good morning, sir.
But in the evening, the man on the gate comes into his own.
Company! Point!
Not only does he drill the lads who work at the benches and in the offices, but he also has the managing director in the squad.
Keep your arm parallel with the elbow into the side, your fingers round the butt of the rifle to the bottom, and your thumb round the toe of the butt of the rifle. You understand?
Yes, sir.
The lesson of the Western Front has been well learned, notably in Australia. Apart from divisions that are already serving in the British Isles and the Middle East, New South Wales is training thousands more of these matchless fighters from down under. Anti-tank guns take a #1 place in that fighting. The Governor-General, Lord Wakehurst, watches with the keen eye of an old soldier, and he takes a turn at the controls of the new weapon. Australia has her tanks too, built in Australian factories, manned by Australian crews, armoured with the toughest metal in the world and equipped with deadly guns against aircraft and ground attacks. Over to Victoria, another training ground in the vast barracks of the Great Dominion. Armoured cars, lighter and faster than tanks, but no less deadly. Roads or rough country come all alike to the crews of these land destroyers, and they spill out bullets like water from a hose. The feverish pace of war is driving us on relentlessly. We live from day to day under the strain of strong emotions. So let's ask ourselves now and again what it is that we're fighting for. This is our pleasant land in its loveliest season. How would you feel if you saw Nazi stormtroops tramping over our country? This is the setting for this United Kingdom, and these are the things that have become a part of our lives. We have been able to enjoy these things because this was our free land. We used to grumble, of course we did. We used to grumble because we couldn't get a drink after hours, or because the weather was always awful. We hadn't had a decent summer for years, and if the sun did shine on Derby Day, we used to back the wrong horse. It wouldn't be so bad if that was all we had to worry about now. But the only way we can be sure of getting these things back again is by winning this war. We loved these things in peacetime, and we felt that the world had moved forward since the last war, so that we could be left to enjoy these things like reasonable human beings. We thought that the days were past when the lives of 1 million men would be sacrificed in battle to gratify German ambition. But we were wrong. The laws of the jungle still hold good. We must fight to live. We must fight if we are not to end our days in slavery. We must fight with all our strength if we are ever to enjoy these simple things again. We believe that the right to live our national life in our own way is worth fighting for, and we shall fight for it to the last ditch. In every walk of life, it is just as important to put every ounce of energy into the job, just as these men of the Royal Air Force whom the King has come to decorate. They do their job so well because they know how much depends on them. Each one of us should say, it all depends on me. First to be honored by the King was Flight Lieutenant Lee, who received the DSO and the DFC. He fought on when his machine was all but shot to pieces. Flying Officer Blair received the DFC. One of his achievements was to shoot down 2 Heinkels in one day. Squadron Leader Kyle, DSO and DFC. His squadron destroyed 32 enemy aircraft. His own total was 9. Before leaving, the King shook hands with a fighter squadron about to take off for a flight over enemy territory. These men know how much the Empire relies on them to win the war against barbarism. Each one of us should feel that our own individual effort counts just as much.